I am 87, and this winter I counted the 6 times I picked up something that belonged to one of my children and carried it myself. 6. I counted them on the back of a seed envelope before the light came up, and when I set the pencil down, I did not feel ashamed, and I did not feel proud. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. Not one of the 6 was a wrong thing to do. That is what hid them. Every one of the 6 looked like love when I did it. Every one of them cost somebody something. And the 6th is the one I would take back first because it cost neither money nor labor. Come sit down a while. Pull the chair close, the one with the worn arm. I am not telling you that I loved my children too much. There is no such thing. I am not telling you to turn hard or to let your own people go hungry to teach them a lesson. That is not the teaching. It is not a complaint about the young. It is not advice I read somewhere. It is 6 things I did with my own 2 hands, believing each time I was being a good father. What I am telling you is smaller than that and harder. Do you want to hear it? My grandmother said a thing to me when I was 9, and I did not understand it for 60 years. She said, "What you carry for a person, you carry away from them." I thought she meant firewood. I had hauled her water bucket up from the creek without being asked, and she was not pleased. She said, "That bucket was the only heavy thing I was going to lift today. My arms are old, but they are not finished. You took my morning from me and called it a gift." Then she walked me back to the creek, set the bucket where I had found it, and carried it up herself, resting twice. I stood there with the water sloshing on my feet and thought she was ungrateful. She was being exact. It took me until this year to learn the difference. The first confession is a truck note. My son bought a used truck the year he turned 40. The payments were heavier than he had figured, and I could hear it in his voice, that thin sound a man makes when he is doing arithmetic while he talks to you. So, one Tuesday I drove to town alone, paid the rest of it off, and told nobody. The woman at the counter asked if I wanted a receipt. I said no. I wanted it to have happened by itself, like weather. He found out from the bank. He said, "Dad, why?" I had no answer that was true. So I gave him the one that sounded good. I said, "Because I could." That is the sentence I would take back. Because I could is not a reason. It is an appetite. What I was buying that day was not his truck. It was the sound of his relief. My grandfather used to say, "A river that is never allowed to flood builds no soil on its banks." I took my son's flood. He got no soil that year. Before I give you the second one small thing, and I will not raise it again. There is a little book, and it is called The Native Way. It holds the sayings my grandmother kept and the ones my grandfather muttered over his coffee, so they do not die in this house with me. If you would like a copy, you will find the link in the description below. Click the link below, and it is yours. If you would rather not, that is fine too. No pressure at all from me. I am here either way. I will be here tomorrow, and the sayings are yours right here regardless. Now, the second confession is the one my daughter has never once mentioned to me, and I have come to think that silence is its own kind of answer. They were 3 years married when they had their first real fight, the kind that is not about the dishes. She called me at 10 at night, crying, and I did what a father does. I got in the truck. I drove the 40 miles. I sat down at their kitchen table between the 2 of them, and I talked until the thing lay down. Do you know that feeling? To be certain you have just been useful? I was proud of that drive for a long time. Should I have been? Grandmother Weaver, who wove at the end of our road until her hands would not close, told about a young pine somebody planted on the lee side of a barn, out of the wind, where it would be safe. It grew fast and straight, faster than the pines out in the open. And the year the barn came down, that pine went over in the first hard blow. A tree that is never shaken does not know it needs to hold on. Its roots had stayed near the top of the ground, where the living was easy. My daughter and her husband have been married 31 years. They have never once finished a fight without me. I made them a barn, and I will not always be standing. The third confession has a name attached to it, and the name is Walter. Walter ran a shop in town and owed me from a long time back, from a winter I do not need to describe. My grandson was 22 and had been turned down 4 places, and I could not stand it, so I called in the favor. The boy had work by Friday and never knew why. He kept that job 9 years and was never once promoted. He never had to walk into a room cold and make a stranger want him. And by 31, there was a hollow place where that skill should have been. My grandmother had a saying for a seed kept safe under a stone. She said it will not rot and it will not sprout. It will look exactly like a seed forever, and forever is not the same as alive. I set a stone over that boy and I called it help. What does a seed need? Not safety, weather. The fourth confession is firewood, and it is the smallest one. Watch how small it is. My son and his family live an hour north, where the winters bite. 3 Octobers running I drove up while they were at work, split and stacked their winter's wood along the south wall, 4 cords of it, and left before they got home. I wanted to be a weather they never had to watch. Eli, who taught me to fell a tree when I was 14, told me the first frost is the teacher of the whole season. It comes early and hard, and it says, "Get ready, the cold is real," and every creature that hears it starts putting things by. Now think about a frost that comes late. Everything green got fooled, nothing was stored. I was the late frost. 3 years running, my son never felt October. Then the 4th year I could not make the drive, and he was out there in a headlamp in November swinging a maul he had not swung since he was a boy, learning in the cold what he could have learned in the mild. The 5th confession is an apology that was not mine to make. My son said something ugly to a neighbor over a fence line and a dog. He was wrong. He knew he was wrong, and he was taking his time about it the way a proud man does. 2 days went by and I could not sit still. So I walked down that road myself, hat in my hand, said the words my son should have said, and the fence line was settled by supper. Old Man Standing Pine, who talked less than any man I have known, said the canyon wind has to go through the canyon. It cannot go around. That is what a canyon is for, and a man who has been wrong has a wind like that in him, and it has to pass through him and out of his own mouth, or it stays in there and turns. My son and that neighbor were polite for 11 years, and never friends again. He never became a man who repairs things. I took that from him with my hat in my hand. And now the 6th, and this is the one I would take back first. 2 years ago, my daughter came to me about a piece of land she meant to buy, and she asked me straight what I thought. I knew that ground. I knew what the creek does in a wet spring. I knew who had farmed it, and why they quit, and I had it in my mouth, ready to say. And then I looked at her face. She wanted it so badly. She had already named the place in her heart, so I softened it. I said, "Well, there is a little water that comes through the low end some years. A little water." That is what I said. She bought it. The low end went under in April, and every April since, and she has spent 2 years, and most of what she had, fighting a creek I could have described, in one honest sentence. The other 5, I gave her money, or an evening, or my back, or my pride. This one I gave her a soft version of a hard thing, and she made the biggest decision of her middle life with her eyes shut. I am the one who shut them. Samuel used to say a leaf held on the branch past its time is not being kept. It is being stopped. The tree has already let go, the color has already turned, and the wind is only waiting. When it comes off in December, it comes off torn, in weather, alone, instead of falling in October among all the others. That is what a softened truth does. It does not cancel the fall. It only makes certain your child falls later, and harder, and by herself. That one was not money, and it was not labor. That one did real harm. Naming these 6 was not the same as hating myself for them. I know how an old man's list can curdle. Every one of those 6 was love. Crooked love, love with my own name written on it, love that wanted to be needed. But love. Here is something I have not said out loud. My wife has been gone 11 years, and she never knew about the truck note either. A man who is rescuing everybody keeps the books closed. A man who carries too much is not a bad man. He is a man doing one thing too often, and a thing done too often is not who you are, it is only what your hands have gotten used to. My hands got used to reaching. Hands can be taught otherwise, even old ones. There is a difference between a father and a roof. A roof keeps everything off. A father is meant to be more like a good tree beside a field, close enough to matter, not so close that nothing else gets sun. I am learning to be the tree, and I am slow at it. I sat on my hands all last week while my son worked out a thing with a bank. He worked it out. Let me gather this up now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl before she stepped out into the cold. A truck note I paid in secret. An argument I settled that was theirs to settle. A favor I called in for a boy who needed to knock on doors. A winter's wood I stacked before he could feel October. An apology I carried down the road in place of the man who owed it. And a truth I made soft, so my own girl walked into water she could not see. 5 of them I did with my hands. The 6th I did with my mouth, by keeping it half shut, and that is the one still costing her. Now turn it toward your own kitchen. Whose weather have you been standing in front of? What did you pay this year that was not yours to pay? And the hard one, what have you softened lately, because you could not stand the face they would make if you said it plain? I can hear the question, because I asked it at this same table. Is it too late for me? I will not promise you that anything comes back, or that it comes back soon. I do not know your children, and I do not know what has already been spent. But this much I do know, and 87 years has not taken it from me. You can still notice. You can still feel your own hand starting to reach, and let it stay in your lap instead. Nothing is lost in you. The reaching was never the wrong part. It was only ever the timing. That is what age leaves you, the noticing, and the one ordinary choice that comes after it. Small, I know. It is also where every one of my 6 would have ended. Now I would like to hear from you, and I mean that plainly. Of those 6, which number sat down heaviest in your chest? Was it the truck note, the firewood, or was it the 6th, the truth made soft? Tell me the number down in the comments, and a little about it if you have the heart to. I read them. Every one, in the morning, with my coffee, and then come back and sit with me tomorrow. I will leave the chair where it is.